Following the spread of the wildfire raging across Los Angeles, a mandatory evacuation order has been issued in the Hollywood Hills. The Los Angeles Fire Department says the order had to be given because the area is close to the public and the situation there is life-threatening. At least 5 persons have been confirmed dead and over 1,000 houses lost. More than 130,000 people have already had to evacuate, and the homes of a number of celebrities, including Paris Hilton and Billy Crystal, have been destroyed. Many roads near the Hollywood Boulevard, home to the Hollywood Walk of Fame, were reportedly gridlocked with traffic, with some people driving on the wrong side of the road. The Pentagon has reacted to the situation.
As you probably just saw, the President, Governor Newsom, and others received a briefing on the devastating wildfires in Southern California, which the department continues to monitor. At the President's direction, the Department of Defense will provide additional firefighting personnel and capabilities. The federal government is working closely with the National Guard, which is deployed under the Governor's State of Emergency Declaration. The California National Guard is adding 2 modular air firefighting system units, and 2 more are being readied by the Nevada National Guard. The Department of Defense has 4 additional MAFs that could be used if needed. Additionally, the department is sending 10 Navy helicopters with water delivery buckets to immediately assist with aerial suppression.
Firefighters tackling the raging blaze have experienced water shortage, resorting to taking water from swimming pools and ponds. The fire broke out Tuesday in the Pacific Palisades neighborhood near Malibu and spread across the northern area of the city. The Palisades blaze is already being tagged the most destructive in U.S. history.
For more on the raging fire from Los Angeles to California, I'm joined by senior consultant in climate resilience, adaptation planning and carbon management, Dr. Justin Udier from the United Kingdom. Dr. Udier, thank you for joining us on the news this hour. Precisely how do you think climate change contribute to the increasing frequency and severity of wildfires in the U.S.? And what role does it really play in the ongoing Los Angeles fire?
Okay, good afternoon from me, Nifemi. Thank you so much for the invitation to speak on this. I think before I get into the question about the nexus of climate change, is it all right to possibly maybe talk about this fire and see how it has become frequent in recent times and how much land has been subjected to or has been burned as a result of this, so that can give us some kind of background to this, okay? But normally, before fire will happen, there are 3 things that will be around for ignition to occur. First, primarily, you're going to have oxygen, you're going to have heat, you're going to have source of fuel for ignition to happen or for combustion to happen in this case. So if you now look at it maybe at macro level and look at again how climate change could play impact, is that number 1, you have strong winds, you have dry vegetation in the case of California, as well as heat that has become prevalent in recent times. So these 3 indicators will tell you normally that there will be ignition. Now, what has happened in the case of California that becomes more peculiar, you want to say, is that there have been a rising temperature and heat wave, and that is not only peculiar to California, it's happened in different parts of the world. We've seen that there is scanty rainfall and rainfall uncertainty, sometimes even 4 inches below the expected average. There have been California drought, put it that way, in this case, just making it a California case, and of course the desert wind that comes from the north of the U.S. into California and towards the shore is about sometimes above or up to 100 miles per hour. So you could see that that wind speed, in addition to dry vegetation and any ignition, could fuel fire and exacerbate it at the speed, the magnitude that we are facing at the moment. But then, if we must look at it from the climate climate change perspective, yes, there are indicators of climate change which these issues can pick up from. Number one is the rise in temperature, isn't it? We know in the case of California alone, between 1990 and present day, there's been at least a 1 degree, which is about 1.8 Fahrenheit rise in temperature. There have been a decline in snowpack. There have been prolonged droughts. There have been shift in rainfall patterns as well as increased wind events. So if you put all of these together, okay, it gives us an idea that climate change will have the overarching causes of wildfires.
Absolutely. The fire, as we know now, is affecting residential areas like Hollywood Hills. I'm wondering what you think the challenges of managing such wildfires are, especially in urban wildland interface zones. How do you think cities can better prepare for such disasters?
Yeah, that's area where we talk about climate change or disaster preparedness generally in this case. Okay, so there are certain factors that cities will want to take into consideration in responding to this. So number one is reduction, if it is possible, because it's not absolute to talk about these things. It is easier to mention, but when it comes to operationalizing or mainstreaming, it will be difficult or has some challenges, but they are not unsurmountable. So number one, response adaptation measures will look at reduction in the storage of fuel substances, the general management of anything that will cause ignition, and that will include the overall woodland, checkmating ignition activities such as camping that usually will spark fire. Sometimes even people smoking cigarette will spark fire. Then look at urban planning, limiting building in maybe fire-prone areas could help. Then people with assets, buildings and houses should maybe in a way purchase fire insurance for homes and for businesses that will be lost in this kind of situation. Strengthening emergency response. Because if you look at the case of this, and I think it is important that this is mentioned, okay? Sometimes if you have one incident of fire, the emergency responders will be able to respond and manage it effectively. If you have two, it begins to stretch. We have three, in this case, having up to 4 or 5 happening concurrently or simultaneously, it becomes really difficult for emergency responders to manage. So it is now important that emergency response is reviewed and strengthened in a way that it will cope with fire break, okay, in such as this magnitude. We cannot overlook policies, and we cannot also overlook evacuation and timely ordering of warning signs and provision of warning signs and ordering people to move. Then maybe lastly, and what usually we'll talk about is the mitigation of climate.
Dr. Dear, we have completely run out of time. It really baffles the mind that U.S. with all the resources at its disposal continue to baffle this kind of a challenge. If you can in 30 seconds talk about sustainable efforts that can be made to have these issues resolved.
Yeah, but before I talk about those, but let's see that there is a bigger risk coming. Unfortunately, I would say it's a risk coming. The incoming president in few days' time is a climate denial. That is a big issue that America will need to contend with in the first place. That's number one, because over time, Donald Trump said, nobody knows whether climate change is happening. He said climate change is a hoax, climate change doesn't affect, and they continue to explore shale gas and other maybe unsustainable